group. I can, yeah, okay.
I started it.
So, okay. This is National SIG Release Meeting for April 10th, 2023. So I don't think anyone has agenda, right? In terms of did anyone write anything on agenda?
One of the things, yeah, obviously, like we were discussing, Stephen, is we need to, yeah, I mean, sprint 1 is it's almost done. Sprint 2, again, we are going to do a lot of things that we picked up from sprint 1. That's going to be, I think, a lot of content of sprint 2 will be that across both SIG automation and SIG release. But like we discussed, sprint 3 onwards, we need to, I mean, sprint 2 onwards itself, probably we can, from a end-to-end deliverable perspective, we can start picking up the task of setting up the test bed. I know Arvind had set up a ask and we made some progress on that issue, a lot of comments there. I think this sprint, we can, from a test infra perspective, we should start looking into that angle, test infra angle. And then probably sprint 3 and sprint 4, probably we should really start doing. I think at sprint 3 we'll have enough meat to do.
Do we have enough things on sprint 2? I mean, I don't think we'll have end-to-end tests, that's for sure. But then do we have enough things on sprint 2 where different components can start integrating? It's like from Vim stuff and the operator stuff. Is there something we can just try and push and see if those pieces could be tested?
Yeah, there is a chance for us, but I think a lot. I'm a bit careful because there's a lot of PRs. I mean, for at the function runtime, it's ISO or whatever we call this thing will be gating, right? Yeah. If that's there, you will have a number of functions that we can apply to the package.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to be a full Bloom thing, but then if it's yeah.
We have something already right now, but it's not yet checked in. Or ISO, there is dependencies between other libraries that we need to do. So, if I look to the progress, I think it's possible, but it's a stretch. I think to be able to get it merged, right? So I'm talking when it's really merged. It's possible, but it's I think it's going to be stretchy.
Right.
Yeah.
And then last time talking to Denise, the status front is not done yet, so that even the integration from operator to watcher agent is something that hopefully we can kick off on sprint 2.
Yes, and then probably my point was sprint 3 onwards we should focus on the integration as well, integration testing. May not be complete thing like pieces together. To your point, Stephen, like maybe just set up the management cluster and then set up the edge cluster, just set up the clusters and try to interact. I mean, I think we have based on what we discussed. I mean, we discussed how we can do that iteratively. We have documented that in that GitHub issue. Probably we should pick it up, and then probably we should do integration testing in both automation of integration testing. I mean, in both sprint 3 and sprint 4. I think probably the goal of sprint 2 should be that we should get to that stage.
Okay.
Yeah,
how are we doing on testbed, by the way? Actually, I haven't got any updates.
Our test infra. I don't know. Wish,
on his iPhone, so it's kind of hard to know whether or not he would be able to do a full Bloom update.
Yeah. Wish and Victor.
Yeah. So. Is Victor on the call? I don't think. So Victor is on vacation. Yeah. Victor is on vacation and is going to be in conference until the 14th. But he has actually said that he will still try to, make contributions as and when time permits. I think he's traveling too at this point of time till 14th. So we should probably expect things might be slow there on that front. And Ravi and I are meeting later today just to discuss the story that we have, and to make sure we understand the scope and ask the right questions and get ask right questions of both, the SIG2 guys and also of Victor to see where he stands. So that will be there'll be some updates after me and Ravi meet later this afternoon. So we'll put some comments in the issue that we have been assigned to.
Okay.
So
Okay,
is it
at
related
this
to
point of
the-
time, looks like we have what we have had for the the kind clusters for the workshop. And then one other thing we have discussed, which I'm going to bring it up too, is like also at some point of time we should also be testing this out end to end on actual clusters, right? Maybe not for R1, but at some point of time we want to deploy clusters, not just kind clusters, correct? I don't see that as a goal.
So we need to
will not
get
be
to a
deploying
state.
clusters.
Yeah, we got to get to a state where we actually have like equipment that we can do.
No, I mean in the GK cluster, one of the things that I know Arvind had suggested.
So GK cluster unfortunately doesn't work for any of AMF, SMF, or UPF.
Oh, okay.
Because it doesn't
Okay, cool.
doesn't support
Okay, that means
yeah.
I see. That means we need to probably.
Obviously, you can go beyond Google, by the way. So
if you look at the
we're not saying that you
installer
must use
story,
GKE. I'm guessing you may be able to go to other Kubernetes hosting cloud providers that may support Multis. I'm not sure. I never actually investigated.
So if you look at the installer story, that is exactly that. Installer story, there are two things, right? One is setting the sandbox, and is where that is more about opinionated way of having management and edge clusters, deploying a few components, and then running end to end. And there's an installer story. Installer story is exactly what you said, where it is only installing Nephew components and it's not doing anything to do with deploying the clusters. Basically, the users will point to, this is a management cluster and these are the workload clusters. And those could be any Kubernetes compliant clusters. And then it should be able to deploy. That's exactly the installer stories.
Okay, I mean, I'm trying to separate that installer story from actually saying end to end. The end to end right now, which is running on a VM, I was only thinking aloud that at some point of time, it also, along with running on a VM, there also needs to be running on an actual cluster. That whether it is actually
not in scope for R1.
Yes.
Yeah. So John was trying to say something. Yeah, John, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, yeah, yes, we will want to provision clusters eventually, but I think we can do that using the same machinery, right? We can create a package that can use an upstream cluster provisioning KRM controller like KCC or Crossplane or AWS, what do they call them? Operators for AWS. And I found like, yeah, so I guess that for the end-to-end tests, it makes sense, I think, right now what we have on the kind clusters, but we definitely want to get to where we can like provision a bunch of other clusters, bootstrap them as workload clusters with the software they need, and then have them attached to the whole Nephew management infrastructure. But I think we can use Nephew to do that. And that's still a sort of stretch goal I have in my back of my mind for R1. I don't know how achievable that is, but
I added them to the backlog. Sorry, John.
Okay.
So both all your wish list of cluster bootstrapping the cluster and then configuring the edge clusters with both config sync and the edge washer, and then pushing the CR through the Git for the GitOps so that the gRPC servers and clients could connect together. I added the issues for that, but I'm not.
Awesome.
My understanding is they are not priority, right? All those three are.
Yeah, I mean, I know Sandeep Sharma from Arna Networks was really interested in that, and I know he was planning to work on it, but I haven't talked to him about it for a while.
Yeah, and then I think now he picked up the controller manager story that you.
Yeah. I think it can come later, right? It can come in sprint 3 or. Do we have a 4th sprint? It can come in a later sprint if we do it, hopefully.
So the controller manager one or the cluster?
No. All this stuff, these backlog items.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, the mind is always very fast. It goes very fast than the actual execution.
That's why we need AI to write all this stuff for us.
Yeah, I think so. All those things are there in the backlog, John, and we can. Well, I think sprint 2 priority. I mean, if we can figure out, I was thinking, like get all the in progress work to the conclusion in sprint 2,
Yeah.
and then get us ready to a stage where we can start doing integration testing in sprint 3, where we can do the management clusters, heads clusters, deploy functions. If we do that, then probably that will be in a happy place. And then probably the other, if we have still cycles, we can bring in the other wish lists.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, like let's have an end-to-end running thing, even if it's missing pieces by the end of sprint 2. Yeah.
What is so by sprint? I mean, it's still 1 day to go, so I'm not gonna make it. Not gonna be putting on Bala right now. But what is the velocity look like at the end of sprint 1?
It's very hard to compute the velocity because we don't have the capacity data. If you don't have the capacity data, we cannot compute the velocity. It is honestly, we are running a sprint mostly in a very non-traditional way, where we do not have the capacity of the people, or we do not have the overall capacity of the issues in terms of either man-hours or story points. And hence, in the lack of those two data, we cannot compute the velocity of the sprint. We cannot have the burn down. So we are mainly doing boards, mainly for the visibility, sharing, tracking, and also have this kind of a macro planning so that we can have these goals, like let's do this in these cycles so that we can achieve the end goal. I think post R1, I think probably after 2-3 sprints, I think we'll have better idea of the contribution level and how much is. I think we can. I'm pretty sure we can do a lot of this data in R2.
At least at eye level, we can do some course correction with blocking it as a sprint. Basically, at least we know the reality.
Yeah.
As a first step.
Always trust that afterward, every sprint. But then I don't think we in general expecting that much on a sprint 1. It's very hard to get a sprint 1 as a data point of saying that, oh, we're not going to make it because it's not a lot of check-ins or anything like that.
It's good actually. I mean, sprint 2, we meet a lot of goals. I mean, right now, we have a clarity on test bed, and we have our repos set up. We have a lot of PR requests, and then across, and that we used. And I mean, we have some core committers, obviously, right? I mean, 4 or 5 core committers, they know everything about the system. But this PRs, the rest of the team, we have used it both to review and also for our own education. What's going on? I think sprint goal, it's a lot of positives that's coming out of sprint 1.
Okay.
Yeah. So, to me, that end-to-end, getting to start integration end-to-end testing in sprint 3 would be a good goal to have. And in fact, I don't think we have to start it in sprint 3 because we'll have only 2 sprints to start running and executing end-to-end tests, because final sprint is only a week, which is mostly our release cutting and then tightening our belt.
Right.
So essentially, even if we started sprint 3, we'll essentially have only two sprints in like 4 weeks to start and complete our end-to-end integration testing. So, and then we also, the good thing is for all these things, a lot of documentation also coming in along with this. For example, it's the design stuff. That is one more thing that we need to worry about, the user-facing documentation in the docs report that Don set up. What we need to put in there, I think we need to have some stories.
That I don't, user guy, I don't expect us to work on until pretty much the last sprint.
Yeah, true. I mean, at least.
But I think earlier. So one thing that I do want to point out, I guess, as part of SIG Release, is that long time ago we kind of agree on a release. We'll first crank out a bunch of design docs, convert them into empty files, and check it into like this release covers this set of things, and those are things that we're going to design and agree on to do. Obviously, for our one, this is not going to happen.
So we don't have it planned. We don't have tasks for that, Bala.
For the release docs, I think so. No, I don't think so.
Release later docs, yeah. But then I'm talking about like I think we long time ago we're talking about a workflow where we'll have a design docs agree upon and then on Google Docs, and then once we get some agreements, I don't think it'll be like full consensus across the board, but then we get some agreements and agree that we're going to do that for the release. We convert that into an MD files and then check it into GitHub. I don't think that workflow is happening for R1 for understandable reasons. But then because of this, I guess people are kind of scrambling. Go ahead, Wim.
Yeah,
Stephen, we are doing, but we are not doing the Google Docs, but we are writing design MD files for the things that matter. Not for every little detail, but for the let's say some of the principles. For example, function runtime, we will have to change the name, so there will be a design MD file. We have a design.md file for all the functions, and we will most likely, because of the parsing of this data with YAML, we will have probably a design MD file for that. So we are trying to, for the decisions that we make and things that are relevant across the board, we are planning, or we are actually implementing design.md files for each of those.
Where are those actually right now? I know they're not in docs because those are user-facing docs.
Yeah, they are in the PRs actually. If you go
In
to
the PRs, and part of the PR
themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you look at this Nephew, if you go to Nephew repo, Stephen, if you look at the PRs, I mean there are also, like Wim said, individual functions also there is a PR. For example, how at least for NAD, at least I saw I reviewed a few of them. And then at least the way I wrote the GitHub issues, I always included for the big items a design as a part of that story. But we have to see how much that can be done.
Okay.
Because otherwise we will never scale, right? So for me, the reason why I did it is to try at least document what we have decided upon, so that other people can read it, not just purely the code, but just a little bit more things around it. And then, is it ideal? Probably no. I mean, but it's okay. It's a stake in the eye, or it's a step.
Yeah, and for raising this point, for one thing, is there are bits and pieces that I guess the operator team didn't quite understand, and I kind of realized I never wrote anything. Not the cube builder type stuff, but then more like for our particular infrastructure, there's some concerns, there's some pieces that weren't in place yet. So then I figured I just wonder where all the design docs are being funneled.
Yeah, I mean, so what you still have today is the Aravin's document, right? The CRD. So we have pieces of it. So there are. It's not that we have that design converted into an MD file at this stage, right? Because, what I'm referring to is the design for the individual components, what we are using to make a decision, and how do we base our code upon that we are documenting right now, or at least that's what I'm doing in my group.
Okay. So I guess the better question would be, what's the goal for Sprint 2?
Yeah, in my view, I mean, get the existing work that is already flow completed, and get to a stage where we can start integration test. I mean, not completely, but at least start integration testing in Sprint 3.
Yeah,
we should identify sort of like MVP type thing, where we are that we can do at least some integration testing. So for instance, you should be able to do some integration testing without SMF and UPF up, SMF and AMF up yet. Should be able to just do it directly with UPF, which is pretty much there. And then so we would identify the extension piece, which I think for UPF there's one extension piece that John did for image, and then we'll take that as part of the package and see how the operators will interpret that and the other pieces together, and then generating things. So that could be one side of some sort of integrations. I don't know when we can automate right away, but then I would like to see some minor pieces of integrations. I would suggest anyway, some minor pieces of integrations that we don't all be sort of like a silo sandbox. and then starting to see pieces where they work together.
Yeah, that would be good. So question is, do you think, I mean, do we have enough content so that at least one version of management cluster could be set up completely? And then to your point, the operator and maybe a UPF deployment on the edge cluster.
How are the CAP functions tested today? Manually, I guess. It's not like driven by obviously not driven by the package variant controller yet.
What we do is we create, so we have a blueprint package that we generate. So that is, so that's there is an example package checked in under 3.5GC, I think. And that we are using for it. And what I added is just cluster context. So I just added a cluster context object. And with that, we can do our tests.
Okay. And then you manually execute the CAP functions, or is something to execute the CAP functions for you?
Yeah, so at the moment it's manual.
Okay.
I mean, even with a Docker file, so even the Docker image. So if you put a CAP file with that function in it, you can run it through Porch. So, but at the moment the testing is done manual still. Yeah, we execute the CAP function manually. Yeah. But if you write a CAP file with the function in it, it will run through Porch. Huh?
What do you, I mean, since John and you and Tao, all of you guys here, what is the realistic thing we can integrate by another 2 weeks, I guess, after this?
See, for me, the biggest dependency that you have from me is this function. So we decided to build a library that makes the function implementation easy. So that's going to be gating on how far we are with that. If that would exist, writing the function is then it's like it's a piece of cake.
Yeah, I think if we can get that done, and then all the functions which are also in flight, at least the major functions that get done. So one thing I wanted to ask John here is, John, the Porch piece that we are doing, that you are doing actually, either is it if I had two parts of the question. If it is done completely in Porch, how that gets rolled into a Nefio deployment? So will Porch cut a release, or how does that work, John?
So that's a great question. Yes, I think we can get a release rolled anytime we need it. That won't be a big problem. But we can also have development builds or something and include those in our tests for now, right? Even if it's not a tagged release, or it's not, we can do it we can build it ourselves or whatever, just clone the repo and build it. So either way works. As long as we get the images we need, it doesn't actually matter. As far as getting it done, that's I'm on vacation next week, so that would mean getting it all done this week, which seems a little unlikely. Although
Do it during vacation.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think I did. It's like fun, right? So I did do a little on the weekend, but I don't think doing it on vacation is a good idea. So that's a concern I have, and but we actually don't. We can test a lot, and we can do a lot without even having that, because we don't need it to do single cluster things. We just need it to do multi-cluster things, right? So all of the stuff that Wim's team needs, all the specialization, can all be done. We can just pull a package and it doesn't need to be generated by the package variant controller in order for all of the stuff from package specialization subproject to kick in. So we can still do a lot even if I don't have that ready yet. There's a decent chance I'll have it ready, because I did, over the last week, the design, certain things got simplified that made them much easier. So we'll see.
Okay, thanks. So you'll be out next week?
Yeah, I'll be out next week.
Okay.
So you said there's not a dependency on the new version. Is that what you said, John? I mean, I'm only trying to put on this thing about.
I'm saying that we can do a lot without waiting for the new version. Yes.
Okay, that's good, because then that way we can plan another release if we need to, just to validate that, with the newer version, because that's how usually it is done. You only change one parameter at a time. I mean, if there's a huge dependency like what you're talking about, from what I see, it's probably a very critical dependency. If you can do without that, that's great. And then it can just be like another point release just to validate with that new release of the Porch version.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about what.
My understanding, that's in my understanding, is not that way. What John said was we could do in the interim, for example, this sprint without much changes, without that changes. But I think what John's vision is, we definitely have those changes for the R1.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see. So we need that. That is a dependency, basically.
Yes.
Yeah,
For this
not
release.
sprint, but not in
Not for the
maybe
sprint.
not in the sprints, but then definitely in that one.
Oh, it is a R1. Okay, got it. Thank you for confirming. Thank you for clarifying that.
And also, it's Vim kind of out next week too. It's KubeCon next week.
I will be. I'm not out, but I will be. Yeah,
pretty busy.
The amount of time I can spend on coding will be probably reduced.
We have 2 Oscar-winning stars out next week then.
But I'll be online, right?
Having too much fun in Amsterdam,
Yes. By the way, there is one more big dependency that I have in general, which is merging the IPAM and the VLAN allocator into the repo. Because, I mean, we were discussing 3.5GC was big. This is probably even bigger.
Oh, you do want to host
Well,
them
the
in
IPAM
Nepio,
piece, the IPAM backend, right? We can use your built images out of your existing repo. We don't actually need it in our.
we don't need it in Nepio per se.
But the allocator function we're rebuilding, right? We're not using the same one from the workshop, right? So that's fine.
Yes.
So
but it's all in
case,
at the moment. It's all in the same repo at the moment. So, yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, we can consume things out of another repo if we have to, but like, if that's something that Nokia wants to donate to Nepio, that would be awesome.
No, we want. I mean, I'm preparing it because I thought we were going to put it there. So I'm preparing it to get there. But what I'm trying to say is that it's a big thing.
Yeah, right. I think I told you all. So we did get internal approval to submit Captain Porch to CNCF, which we have done, but it will take CNCF's talk a few months. They have a process that they go through. So it's not clear when it will be accepted. The application is in. And actually, Wim and Justin are going to be in Amsterdam and do a little presentation to the CNCF tag app delivery on it, I think, next week. But hopefully, which will mean hopefully that other folks don't have to sign a Google CLA in order to contribute. That's all.
So John, just to understand this process, first of all, thanks for doing that. And good luck, Wim, next week. So generally, if CNCF accepts it, right, does it have to go through this incubation phase, or how does it work, John?
Yeah, right. Like you can go for sandbox, incubation, or graduated. Graduated takes a long time. We just put it in sandbox because it's the lowest bar. And because all we really want out of it is the CLA, like we want a foundation ownership. And we can go for incubation later. It's just requires more due diligence and things, so we didn't want to take the time to do that now. But none of that really matters, right? Nepio is brand new, so I don't see how it's all that different.
No. I understood that, but I just wanted to understand the process, how the CNCF works. Yeah.
The way it works is you agree to give them your trademarks, basically, is what it comes down to, and follow their code of conduct and things like that. And you submit your code, you create an application, and then the technical oversight committee reviews that application and decides whether the project is appropriate for CNCF. And they meet every 2 months roughly to make those decisions. And they typically do about half a dozen each meeting, and there are 18 in the queue. And we're number 18. Well, there's more now, but we're number 18 in the queue. So doing the math there, right? It's 6 to 8 months, assuming they're happy with it. So they have these groups, like we have SIGs, they have tags, technical advisory group maybe, that are authorized by the technical oversight committee to do the due diligence on different projects. And so there's a tag called app delivery, and that's kind of what KEPT fits into. And so that group would do due diligence on it, although the diligence level for sandbox projects is quite low. It's more about process than about technology, whereas later they start to ask for production use cases and things like that in the incubation period. So I went through this a long time ago with Core DNS, but there was a different process then, so I haven't actually been through this process. Because it's grown dramatically since then, but I don't think the sandbox process will be too challenging. I think we far exceed all the criteria, put it that way. We probably could have gone straight for incubation, but we didn't because of just it would have potentially added several months to the whole process.
Okay, and typically, John, I'm sorry, it feels like I'm hijacking this meeting, but just 2 more questions. So typically from sandbox to incubation, incubation to graduation, what is the typical timeline?
I don't know exactly, but it's going to be measured in months and years, not in days and weeks. For Captain Porch, we probably could start doing the diligence for incubation right away. So it's theoretically possible we could get there in a couple months, but basically it requires more of a commitment from the tag to spend time, and people are busy. There's lots of projects who want attention. So it's really about getting through that process. I think the criteria, we meet all the criteria already for incubation, but there's, like I said, there's just additional effort that has to go in. Graduation used to take, I don't know the answer to that question. My guess would be probably a year.
Years.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it took Core DNS when we did it. We didn't have, well, Core DNS was like, they created the tier Inception for Core DNS and Linkerd. So those were the 2 projects that were sort of too immature at the time to go into directly into the talk, and then or into the incubation. And Core DNS was like 3 weeks old at the time, but the not quite, but then once we got to incubation in Core DNS, it took us about a year to get to graduation. And I don't remember, it's been a long time. But a lot of that was, with open source projects, it's sometimes hard to prove they're being used in production. So I had to chase down basically people in Slack, on Kubernetes Slack and CNCF Slack and on the internet, Twitter and whatever, and be like, hey, will you add yourself to this file, right? Like, so we have 30 or 40 companies that added themselves to the file. Once we, of course, became part of Kubernetes by default, but I think that was post-graduation, then everybody used us all over the place. But, so it's a sort of a little chicken and egg thing,
Got it. So once it starts rolling, it starts really rolling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that education. Thanks, John.
Yeah, I mean, it's an education on a 3 or 4 year old process. I don't know how valid it is. I haven't been through it for a few years.
Yeah, good to understand the steps.
Okay. Is there anything else that we want to talk about? Well, if not, well, have a good vacation, John, and
We'll
then
be here this week.
enjoy your time, Vim, at Amsterdam. Well,
He's
I will
already
try.
Enjoy at KubeCon. KubeCon. I think
I
he's going to
I
enjoy
will
this
try.
KubeCon.
Yeah, I'm doing some talks for us here, right? So it's like
Yeah.
yeah,
normally
please.
John would have been with me, but unfortunately he couldn't come. So normally we would be duo.
John wanted to take a vacation instead of going to KubeCon.
I wanted to take a vacation in Amsterdam with my family, but it just didn't work out that way. So.
Don't really have a big house on the background. Nice.
Oh, thank you.
And there's a Kubernetes Edge Day. I'm the chair, so feel free to stop by.
Ah, nice. So you'll be there, Tina, right? In Amsterdam?
I pre-record my talk.
Okay.
We have international travel restriction for content. It's unfair.
Okay. I see.
yeah, I could understand that all over.
Mm.
Yeah.
You you guys are gonna talk about nephew there.
Vim is
I mean, it's not direct, but
Related,
indirect. Yes,
yeah. Related.
It's related, but it will be all about nephew. But although
Yeah,
we
it's,
cannot.
it's how we're using these techniques and technologies in Nepio and how they might help your organization, kind of thing.
Yeah, very useful.
All the stuff Wim's project or sub-project is.
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks
Thank you
all.
so much. Talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.